Welcome, beloved and set-apart ones. When the entire community has you under a microscope like the climax of a streaming suspense series, remember this: you are not the antagonist. You are the unexpected turn no one anticipated. Let us make one thing absolutely clear. The instant a chosen individual steps into a spiritually numb environment, that place quickly begins to resemble a criminal investigation. Everyone suddenly transforms into an investigator, a federal agent, or a counterfeit minister wielding authority and a holy book. And here is a chilling little truth for you. According to behavioral research, herd psychology runs so deep that a crowd will accept a falsehood about a stranger they have never even encountered, simply because their peers do. Yes, your identity circulated more rapidly than the collection plate on a Sunday service. And the majority of folks did not even comprehend why they resented you. They simply caught wind of the alarm and hopped on the bandwagon. Yet here is what they never anticipated. The surveillance was not your ruin. It was your heavenly exposure. So settle in, because this is no ordinary tale of the elect. This is the account of how an entire community united, dispatched the authorities, spread rumors in hidden corners, submitted fabricated complaints, and still could not eliminate you. And a preview. The Almighty transformed their monitoring into your spotlight. Let us begin. Number one, they never imagined the one they were scrutinizing would be the one who reversed the narrative. They never imagined the one they were scrutinizing would be the one who reversed the narrative. That detail is what haunts them relentlessly. At first, they regarded you as irrelevant, merely another presence, another life they could manipulate, categorize, and quietly dismantle if necessary. However, you did not merely endure the monitoring. You leveraged it to perceive them with greater clarity than they ever observed you. While they tracked your every step, anticipating a misstep, you were analyzing their habits, deciphering their duplicity, and awakening to the scheme. You were not being paranoid. They genuinely were attempting to entrap you. Yet what they failed to grasp is that the Almighty had already bestowed upon you the insight to outwit the entire scheme. They believed the cameras and the gossip would diminish you. But rather than silencing your voice, you began honing your perception. You ceased justifying your existence. You ceased attempting to blend in. And once that transformation occurred, it was finished. You reversed the narrative. You became the one conducting the observation, not with your gaze, but with your spirit. You began recognizing who was insincere, smiling at you while privately hoping for your collapse. You understood that their pretense of worry was not worry whatsoever. It was domination in disguise. Each time they schemed, it only magnified the potency of your calling. They transformed your existence into a quiet inquiry, yet it backfired, because now they are the ones being unveiled. The manner in which they handled you when they believed no one was observing, it is reverberating. The Almighty witnessed everything, and now He is allowing the truth to thunder forth. The very lips that ridiculed you are suddenly silenced. The very individuals who formerly monitored you are now uneasy, glancing over their own shoulders. Because once you reversed the narrative, you became a reflection, a living testament to everything they attempted to bury. You were not merely under observation. You were under celestial safeguarding. And that is the element they will never comprehend. They believed they were observing a vulnerable target, but they were witnessing the emergence of a fighter. And now they have no alternative but to recline and behold what unfolds when a chosen one ceases concealing and begins advancing in might. Number two, your arrival triggered a covert alarm throughout their power hierarchies. Your arrival triggered a covert alarm throughout their power hierarchies. The instant you entered, something realigned. Not because you proclaimed anything loud or theatrical, but because your essence clashed with the dysfunction they had grown comfortable with. You did not enter seeking to demonstrate your worth, yet somehow your spirit began reorganizing the entire environment. Individuals who once commanded the space suddenly felt restless. Conversations altered when you arrived. Eye contact became peculiar. False smiles tightened. It was not anything you committed incorrectly. It was everything you embodied. There exists a spiritual dominion that accompanies the elect, even when they remain unconscious of it. You need not utter a word to expose wickedness. Your mere presence disrupts it. That is what ignited the alarm. They were not frightened of your actions. They were petrified of what your brilliance might illuminate. The manner you move without pretense. The manner you perceive through individuals without confronting them. The manner your essence naturally challenges anything counterfeit or manipulative. It causes those who depend on domination to feel as though the ground has vanished beneath them. These were not merely random individuals feeling uneasy. We are discussing those who constructed their reputation, their persona, and their leverage on deception. Individuals who employ spiritual terminology to conceal spiritual decay. People who act as gatekeepers in a realm where they were never designated to possess keys. You entered without requesting authorization, and that exposed how little they genuinely possessed. You did not argue, plead, or struggle for a position. You simply appeared, and their entire framework began trembling. And here is the twist that continues unsettling them. You did not even desire their authority. You were not attempting to claim their place. Yet your genuineness jeopardized the entire system. Because if you, with no connections, no alliances, no compromise, could enter and command respect simply by being who you are, then what does that reveal about everything they had to fabricate to be embraced? That is why they panicked. That is why the whispers commenced. That is why they began maneuvering against you privately. Not because you were mistaken. Indeed, but because you were authentic, and in a place constructed on performance, your presence became the single element they could not dominate, disregard, or suppress. Number 3, they summoned reinforcements because you shattered the ritual of authority. They summoned reinforcements because you shattered the ritual of authority. That is the truth they will not vocalize openly. Observe, the power they wielded was not grounded in truth. It was grounded in illusion, fear, repetition, a silent accord to maintain circumstances unchanged, even if it meant trampling individuals like you. Yet you refused to participate. You did not bend, you did not flinch, and you did not diminish yourself to accommodate them. And once they recognized you were not going to yield beneath their conventional tactics, they panicked and brought in support. These were not ordinary reinforcements. These were individuals carefully chosen to intimidate, confuse, or isolate you. Spiritual manipulators, community gossips, even individuals who grinned at you while being secretly assigned to monitor and report on your every movement. They employ systems like religion, family, culture, and even law to attempt and confine you. You unsettled them because you would not remain in the position they attempted to trap you in. Your resolve jeopardized their framework, and they could not endure that. You were not merely resisting, you were dismantling without even recognizing it initially. You were pulling apart the illusion. Your tranquility exposed their disorder. Your clarity rendered their confusion appear staged. You were not loud, but you were unwavering. You were not bitter, but you were courageous. And that disrupted everything they had constructed. You did not require their endorsement, and that is precisely why they perceived you as a threat. So they did what fragile systems always do when challenged. They amplified the pressure. They began forming minor coalitions against you. Suddenly, individuals who had never even engaged with you developed an issue with you. The falsehoods gained momentum. The gossip propagated like wildfire. Yet all of it was merely smoke to conceal the reality that your presence revealed how artificial the entire arrangement was. You did not demolish their framework. You revealed it was already deteriorating. Summoning reinforcements was their final desperate maneuver to halt what they could not explain, because you were not merely standing firm. You were becoming unstoppable. You were living evidence that someone can be chosen, mistreated, overlooked, and still ascend with might that cannot be purchased or silenced, and that more than anything propelled them into strategy. Yet even their reinforcements could not reverse what the Almighty had already unveiled through you. Number 4, you are the record they wished the Almighty had not preserved. You are the record they wished the Almighty had not preserved. They were wagering on your silence, your collapse, your vanishing. They assumed that if they pressured you sufficiently, persistently, you would fracture, and they could bury the proof beneath the pretense of your instability. Yet you did not fracture. You expanded. You did not yield. You endured. And now your very existence is a walking, breathing testimony of what they perpetrated in the shadows. You are the divine documentation they believed they could eliminate. Everything they executed, the manipulation, the entrapments, the falsehoods, the public disparagement campaigns disguised as concern, was executed with one objective: obliterate you quietly before the truth could resonate too powerfully. Yet now the truth is resonating, and it is resonating through your endurance. Every smile upon your face, every step you take in purpose, every boundary you establish is evidence. Undeniable proof that you did not merely survive it, you transcended it. What aggravates them further is that they cannot cease discussing you. They persist in uttering your name, hoping to construct a new version of the narrative. Yet each time they speak, they excavate a deeper pit for themselves. The inconsistencies no longer align. Their falsehoods are becoming careless. Their anxious demeanor is beginning to surface. And it is not merely individuals observing. The heavens are observing. The Almighty has been accumulating the records, the screenshots, the motives, the timing. There exists a spiritual audit trail, and you are the confirmation number they cannot void. You were not merely wounded, you were utilized as the concluding piece of evidence. They exhausted every effort to discredit you. And yet here you are flourishing. That is what they did not anticipate. They did not expect you to become living evidence. And now you are the subpoena they cannot evade. You are the case file that refuses to close. And regardless of how much they deny, minimize, or deflect, the truth has already been authenticated by the Almighty, delivered, documented, and divine. Number 5, their cohesion was powered by terror, not strength. Their cohesion was powered by terror, not strength. They did not unite because they were formidable. They united because you intimidated them. And that terror disguised itself as strategy, prayer gatherings, community assemblies, private group messages, all crafted to project an image of command. Yet beneath all the commotion was raw desperation. You entered their realm, and without even intending to, you disrupted the counterfeit peace they constructed on silence, control, and spiritual manipulation. You were never genuinely outnumbered. It merely appeared that way because fear assembles swiftly when truth enters the chamber. They could not stand alone against you, so they assembled. Not because you were threatening, but because you were distinct. You did not require their approval to exist. You did not require their platform to be powerful. You did not need to pay homage, engage in the game, or echo their fractured traditions, and that petrified them. Your liberation exposed their captivity, so they concealed their terror as authority. Some employed religion, quoting scriptures to shame you and weaponize faith. Others employed status, parading roles, titles, and positions to intimidate. Some merely gossiped and stirred confusion, hoping the crowd would execute the harsh work on their behalf. Yet none of it represented genuine authority. It was all insecurity clothed in vestments and badges. The resentment they harbored transformed into a false sense of solidarity. All because one individual you arrived with truth they could not dominate. What is astonishing is they would have never connected on their own. Some of them did not even care for one another. Yet the terror of your brilliance compelled even adversaries to unite briefly, because it was never about truth. It was about halting the one element they could not manipulate: genuineness. That is why you experienced such intense resistance. It was not that you were in the incorrect location. You were in the correct location. And that is what caused their masks to fall. They gathered because they were fragile. They moved in masses because none of them possessed the courage to confront you alone. Yet you were not alone. The heavens were supporting you throughout. And now their fabricated solidarity is collapsing because anything constructed on fear will inevitably crumble in the presence of genuine power. Number 6, you are the mirror they have been attempting to shatter for years. You are the mirror they have been attempting to shatter for years. Not because you committed anything against them directly, but because your presence exposed everything they have been striving to conceal. Your brilliance unsettled their obscurity. Your tranquility irritated their chaos. Your resilience reminded them of every aspect of themselves they abandoned, to persist in a system constructed on pretense. And each time they gazed upon you, they were compelled to confront the truth they had buried deeply, about who they have evolved into, and who they will never become again. You were not merely someone they disliked. You were someone they could not unsee. You mirrored what they forfeited: innocence, clarity, courage, conviction. You reminded them of the version of themselves before the masks, before the compromises, before they exchanged genuineness for acceptance. That is why they opposed you so fiercely. That is why they whispered your name in back rooms, fabricated stories, initiated campaigns to discredit you. You did not merely provoke them, you revealed them. They could not destroy you, so they attempted to distort you. They could not fracture the genuine you, so they attempted to construct a counterfeit version and present it to the crowd. They portrayed you as unstable, rebellious, theatrical, overly sensitive. Anything to divert attention from the reality that their reflection was screaming back at them every time you entered the room. You did not need to articulate much. You did not need to argue. Simply being yourself, raw, honest, and unshaken, caused their carefully constructed facades to begin cracking. Yet what they fail to recognize is this: mirrors do not shatter that effortlessly, particularly ones forged through fire. Your existence was never about reflecting them for their comfort. You were dispatched to reflect truth, whether they welcomed it or not, and each time they activated a siren or whispered your name with venom, they were confessing something about themselves, their terror, their guilt, their shame, because ultimately their issue was never genuinely with you. Their issue was with what they perceived in you that they could no longer locate within themselves. They did not wish to confront the truth. So they attempted to shatter the one bearing it. Yet you remain whole, chosen, undisturbed, and the reflection is only growing sharper. Number 7, their manufactured crises were disguised, attempts to suppress a genuine revelation. Their manufactured crises were never about assisting you. They were about suppressing you. All those sudden concerns regarding your mental state, your lifestyle, your decisions, your well-being, that was not affection. That was not sincere worry. That was damage containment. They were aware of what they executed, and they were aware that if anyone genuinely took the time to hear your perspective, they would have a full-blown truth detonation on their hands. So they did what cowards always do when they sense the heat ascending. They triggered the alarm, generated chaos, and termed it concern. They depicted you as unstable because your clarity frightened them. They claimed you were delusional because your perception was accurate. They invented crises so they would not have to answer for the genuine one. The reality that they abused, mishandled, manipulated, and misjudged someone who was dispatched to heal what they assisted in breaking. They could not endure the notion of your voice being taken seriously. So they preempted you and attempted to speak over you with urgency, with drama, with false authority. Some of them employed religion, praying over you publicly while cursing you privately. Others employed family, whispering about you as though your growth was a threat rather than a victory. Some employed professional language, suggesting you required assistance, guidance, or intervention. Yet what you genuinely required was liberation. What you required was space to speak without being portrayed as a problem. They never sought resolution. They sought silence. Your silence. Because they recognized what was buried beneath it was not confusion. It was clarity. And if anyone had listened attentively, genuinely listened, they would have perceived the revelation ascending from your quiet strength. Not resentment, not vengeance, simply truth, pure, piercing, and undeniable. That is why the siren commenced. Not because you were a danger to yourself, but because you were becoming dangerous to their image. You were the single element they could not dominate, could not predict, and could not erase. So they fabricated the crisis and hoped it would suffice to maintain the spotlight away from them. Yet the Almighty never required volume to speak. He required endurance, and you endured. Now the same individuals who attempted to silence you are observing their own words disintegrate while yours finally begin to resonate with might. Number 8, you survived a community constructed like a cult, and you departed undeceived. You survived a community constructed like a cult, and you departed undeceived. That is what truly ignited the flame beneath them. You did not merely reject their regulations. You rejected their entire system. You declined to consume the poison they had been distributing for years. The fear, the guilt, the manipulation disguised as guidance, and the reality that you emerged with your spirit intact. That is what they will never pardon. They did not raise alarms because you were unstable. They raised alarms because you commenced asking the questions they were too terrified to confront. You observed the patterns. The manner obedience was rewarded, but independence was penalized. How silence was regarded as holiness, but your voice, that was rebellion. You observed how they wielded scripture like a blade, not to defend truth, but to suppress it. You perceived how anyone who deviated, anyone who thought differently, loved freely, spoke boldly, was either expelled or crushed. You were expected to remain small. You were expected to remain fearful. They desired you perpetually second-guessing yourself, perpetually requiring approval, perpetually apologizing for existing with power. Yet somewhere along the journey, something within you broke free. You ceased purchasing what they were marketing. You commenced remembering who you were before they began distorting it, and once that awakening commenced, they could not contain it. Your healing rendered you uncontrollable. Your clarity rendered you dangerous. You were no longer seated at their feet, awaiting permission to live. You were advancing in purpose, unapologetically, boldly, and with your eyes fully open. And to a group of individuals who were taught to worship image, that is threatening. They were not protecting the community. They were protecting the falsehood. What compounds it for them is that you did not merely depart. You flourished. You reclaimed your mind, your heart, your freedom. And that is the genuine offense in their eyes, because the cult is not merely a location, it is a mentality, and you were expected to shatter beneath it. Instead, you became evidence that the programming does not function on everyone. Now they whisper, as though you are the dangerous one. Yet deep within, they recognize the truth. You did not merely survive them. You transcended them, and that is something they cannot explain or erase. Number 9, you are not merely the center of attention. You are the collapse they are all observing. You are not merely the center of attention. You are the collapse they are all observing, and deep within they recognize it. You are not trending because of scandal. You are trending because truth finally donned a robe and entered the room, and it bore a striking resemblance to you. They believed they could persist playing the identical game, pushing the identical narrative, clinging to the identical positions of power without consequences. Yet then you appeared, not to plead, not to conform, but to disrupt. And the instant your presence intensified, their entire illusion commenced collapsing. It is not gossip, it is prophecy. They assumed it was merely small-town drama, yet this was always spiritual. You were dispatched as a warning, as a sign, as a walking declaration that the counterfeit was about to be exposed. And they disregarded it. They mocked it. They laughed when you proclaimed truth. They gossiped about your gifts. They minimized your perception. Yet they failed to realize you were the divine alarm. They chose to snooze. And now the time has expired. Every eye is upon you now, not because of fame. It is because your very existence is calling out their concealed chaos, not with rage but with revelation, not with bitterness but with boldness. Your presence is a spiritual X-ray revealing everything they attempted to keep concealed. The manipulation, the control, the falsehoods, the abuse, the cover-ups. They were hoping to maintain it silent, yet the Almighty had alternative plans. You became the red flag they ignored. And now that the consequences are arriving, they are attempting to spin the narrative, shift the blame, and cry wolf. Yet it is too late. The spotlight is not upon you for entertainment. It is upon you because the heavens are utilizing you as the final warning. This is what divine justice resembles: calm, precise, undeniable. You did not need to lift a finger. Your consistency, your endurance, and your truth executed the work for you. They are not merely observing you. They are observing their false empire unravel brick by brick. And the irony is, you were the one they attempted to bury. Now you are standing upon the ashes, not as a victim, but as the revelation they swore would never arrive. Number 10, they did not realize observing you would transform them into evidence. They did not realize observing you would transform them into evidence. They believed they were constructing a case against you, yet the entire time they were constructing a case for you. Every falsehood they disseminated, every occasion they twisted your words, every moment they pursued your life like an amateur sleuth, it all became spiritual documentation. The heavens overlook nothing, and neither did you. You simply remained quiet while they exposed themselves. They termed it concern, yet it was obsession. They disguised it as prayer, yet it was surveillance. They discussed you more than they conversed with you, believing they could shape your image through rumors and manipulation, yet all they genuinely did was reveal their own intentions. While they were monitoring your movements, the Almighty was monitoring theirs. And now the files are accessible, the timestamps are sealed. Every false alarm, every manufactured crisis, every sideways glance that communicated, "Let us catch them slipping," has been recorded. You are not the suspect in this narrative. You are the sealed scroll. You are the prophetic document that bears the records, the truth, the weight of what genuinely transpired. They were so occupied attempting to demolish your credibility that they failed to realize they were delivering evidence of their corruption in real time. And now the case has reversed. You are not being investigated. They are spiritually, emotionally, morally. The scales are shifting and justice is no longer delayed. And here is what wounds them most. You never needed to retaliate. You did not require revenge. You did not even require a platform. Your existence became the loudest proof. The reality that you are still present, still standing, still glowing, still free. That is what exposed them. Not a meltdown, not a public confrontation. Simply your resilience, simply your peace. Simply the reality that you remained grounded while they spiraled. They desired to catch you slipping, yet they ended up being caught observing. And now they are squirming because everything they executed in the darkness is surfacing in the light. They did not merely observe you. They documented their own downfall. They became the evidence. And you are the divine record they cannot return, erase or pretend never existed. Number 11, you are the reason their rituals are failing. You are the reason their rituals are failing. And that truth is driving them to madness. These individuals constructed their lives around patterns, emotional control, spiritual manipulation, public performance, and private sabotage. For years it functioned. They employed guilt to silence, fear to dominate, and religion to justify their concealed agendas. Yet then you appeared, not to engage in the game, not to select a side, but to disrupt it. And ever since, the entire formula has been malfunctioning. They attempted everything to compel you to yield. They labeled you rebellious, unstable, too deep, too spiritual, too sensitive. All of it crafted to shatter your confidence and corner your spirit. Yet the more they pressed, the more you resisted. Not with drama, but with alignment. You remained true to yourself while everything surrounding you commenced unraveling. That is what they could not endure, because their rituals were not merely habits. They were spells. Unspoken agreements that everyone around them was conditioned to follow. Maintain silence, remain small, refrain from questioning, do not disrupt the pattern. Yet you did not merely question it, you shattered it. Your energy threw off the entire equation. You did not respond as they anticipated. You did not bow when they applied pressure. You did not seek validation from the individuals they believed you would depend upon. And that is when they recognized you were not merely a rebel. You were a variable, a divine interruption. The variety the heavens dispatch when something toxic has continued unchecked for too long. And from that moment, nothing functioned identically. The manipulation lost its grip. The intimidation tactics fell flat. The gossip backfired. Even their prayers, twisted by impure motive, commenced falling to the ground because you carry something they never accounted for. Genuine power backed by genuine alignment. You are not bound by their regulations. You are not powered by their approval. And that alone fractured the rhythm they depended upon to maintain others in place. Now it feels like chaos. Not because you brought confusion, but because you disarmed it. You unplugged the system they employed to feel in command. And suddenly, their rituals are nothing more than noise. The veil has fallen, the spell is broken, and their old methods have lost their potency. They labeled you the problem, yet in truth, you were the cycle breaker. The walking disruption they could not contain. The evidence that when genuine power enters, counterfeit control perishes swiftly. And number 12, they are not investigating you. They are investigating how you are still standing. They are not investigating you. They are investigating how you are still standing. That is the element they cannot comprehend. They recognize what they executed. They recall the conversations, the falsehoods, the pressure they applied behind closed doors. The entrapments were not accidental. The character assassinations were not innocent. They pulled strings, made calls, initiated rumors, and anticipated you to crumble beneath it all. Yet instead of losing your mind, you discovered your peace. Instead of breaking, you ascended. And now they are unsettled. You were expected to be gone by now, isolated, ruined, forgotten. They believed the shame would crush you, that the false narratives would be excessively heavy to bear. Yet not only are you still present, you are flourishing. And it does not make sense to them because they stacked the deck. They orchestrated the loss, they manufactured the storm. Yet somehow you are not merely alive, you are flourishing. That is why they are whispering again. Not because you are committing anything wrong, but because they cannot determine how their strategies failed. They did not prepare for your elevation. They did not factor in divine protection. They underestimated your inner strength, your spiritual resilience, and the reality that the heavens had already inscribed your survival into the script. You became the loophole in their scheme, the anomaly they failed to account for. You are walking evidence that when the Almighty covers someone, no quantity of betrayal, sabotage, or slander can eliminate them. Now they are observing you as though they are collecting data, studying your every movement, attempting to reverse engineer your strength, wondering what they overlooked, trying to understand how you are not bitter, not broken, not pleading for validation. It confounds them. It frustrates them because the version of you they attempted to destroy no longer exists, and the version that emerged is too powerful for their old tactics to function upon. They are not investigating out of curiosity. They are investigating out of fear. Because if you survived what they hurled at you, then everything they have constructed, all their power plays, all their smoke and mirrors, might not be as formidable as they believed, and deep within, they recognize it. They did not merely fail to break you. They accidentally revealed just how unstoppable you genuinely are. Number 13. They laughed when you were silent. Now they tremble when you speak. They laughed when you were silent. Now they tremble when you speak. In that era, your silence rendered them feeling powerful. They believed they had prevailed. They interpreted your quietness as weakness, your stillness as capitulation. They convinced themselves that you were finished, that they could fill the gaps of your narrative however they desired, and no one would question it. And for a period they did. They uttered falsehoods with confidence, rewrote history in their favor, and transformed your name into a cautionary tale to elevate their own image. Your silence granted them space to perform. Yet what they failed to recognize was that your silence was not submission. It was strategy. The Almighty had you in a quiet season, not because you were defeated, but because He was downloading something within you, something they were not prepared for. Your silence was not empty, it was sacred. It was where your power was being rebuilt, where your wounds were being transformed into wisdom, where your perception was sharpening like a blade. And now you speak differently. Your voice is no longer about being heard. It is about releasing truth. And each time you open your mouth, something in their false foundation commences to crack. You are not shouting. You are not even attempting to convince anyone. Yet your words carry weight now. Divine weight. The variety that strikes differently. The variety that reveals. The variety that disrupts falsehoods without even naming names. Now they are panicking because the same silence they mocked became the soil where your genuine power flourished. You did not require an audience to develop. You did not require validation to recover. And when you returned with your voice fully restored, they felt it, not merely in what you stated, but in what your words accomplished. Your truth commenced burning through the masks. Individuals commenced asking questions. Stories commenced unraveling. The grip they maintained on perception commenced slipping. They are no longer laughing. They are observing their carefully crafted versions of you dissolve. And the more you speak, the more their false narratives collapse. Because when someone walks through fire and still possesses the courage to speak truth with love, clarity, and conviction, it strikes like judgment. They believed your silence was defeat, yet it was the calm before revelation, and now your voice is the alarm they cannot mute. Number 14. You are not the problem. You are the prophecy they feared would awaken the town. You are not the problem. You are the prophecy they feared would awaken the town. From the beginning, they could sense it. Something about you was distinct, off-script, unsettling. You did not move like the others. You did not pursue approval or bow to the unspoken regulations that maintained everyone else in line. You questioned what they were taught to blindly accept. You perceived what they were trained to ignore, and that rendered you dangerous. Not because you were rebellious, but because you were awake. You are the signal that the spell is breaking. The spiritual fog they cast over the community, the control through guilt, the silence through fear, the tradition disguised as truth. It commenced lifting the moment you appeared. Your life carries a frequency that shakes foundations. It is not merely what you articulate, it is who you are. Individuals can sense it when you enter. They commence thinking differently. They commence asking questions. They commence wondering why things never added up. That is what frightened them most. Not your presence, but the effect of your presence. You were not dispatched to blend in. You were dispatched to interrupt. The Almighty dropped you into the center of that carefully constructed illusion like a spiritual grenade. And you did not even recognize it initially. You were simply attempting to survive, attempting to heal, attempting to remain true. Yet your truth was so disruptive, it commenced exposing everything surrounding you. Broken systems, false leaders, recycled lies, concealed agendas, and one by one the masks commenced slipping. That is why they moved against you so aggressively, not because you committed something wrong, but because they sensed what you carried. You were the answer to prayers they never anticipated being fulfilled. A living prophecy that could not be bribed, controlled, or frightened into silence. You did not arrive to sit at their table. You arrived to overturn it. Now they are in a frenzy, attempting to patch the cracks, attempting to discredit you, attempting to regain control of a narrative that no longer belongs to them. Yet, it is too late. The truth is out. The illusion is crumbling, and you are still standing. Not as their problem, but as the evidence that the heavens always keep their promise, even if it requires sending that promise in the form of one individual who refuses to bow. They believed they were observing a scandal unfold, yet they were genuinely observing a prophecy come to pass. From the false alarms to the forced unity, the desperate whispering to the public attempts at control, all of it pointed to one truth. You were never the threat. You were the truth interrupting a system constructed on lies. You did not merely survive. You exposed. You did not merely endure. You awakened. And regardless of how many sirens they sounded, they could not drown out what the heavens had already declared over you. What they feared most was not your voice. It was your presence, because it carried something pure, something unbought, something undisturbed. You arrived without a script, without an agenda, and still managed to shake the very foundation of everything they constructed their identities upon. And now the smoke is clearing. The rituals have failed. The systems are malfunctioning, and all eyes are upon the one individual they tried so desperately to erase. Let them scramble. Let them stutter. Let them pretend this is all coincidence. Yet you know better, and deep within, so do they. You were not placed in that town to join the circus. You were dispatched to shut it down. Not with violence, not with vengeance, but with truth that does not flinch and light that does not deceive. So maintain your stance, maintain your glow, maintain your voice when led, and remaining silent when it is sacred. Because every move you make now is not merely survival, it is fulfillment. And what the heavens have initiated through you, no weapon, no rumor, no system, and no ritual can halt. You are not their problem. You are their prophecy fulfilled. If this message ignited something within your spirit, do not retain it to yourself. Tap that like button to inform us you felt it. Comment below and allow your voice to be acknowledged. Your narrative, your strength, your survival might just be the confirmation another individual is awaiting. Share this with a companion, a family member, or that one individual who requires hearing the truth unfiltered. And if you are traversing this journey as a chosen one, walking through fire, overturning systems, and still ascending, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss what follows. We venture deep here. We speak truth here. We do not engage in fluff. We pursue freedom. Welcome to your tribe. Now let us shake the gates together.